positions on our committee are vacant. Okay, so if you would like to nominate somebody, if you would like to be nominated yourself, there's nomination forms out here at the front. Please feel free to nominate whoever you wish. If nobody has nominated you and you are willing to do a part on the committee, please put your hand up and we'll find some people to nominate you, that's for sure. It's always good to have a bit of a turnover in the club, get fresh blood in there, new ideas, new thinking. We don't want to go stale. This club has progressed quite a lot in the last 18 months. I think Jeff said we've gone up 40% in our club membership, and that is unusual for a radio club in this day and age. We're doing well, and the reason I think we're doing well is because we cater to all the different facets. We cater to the CW guys, to the HF guys, to the VHF guys, etc., soda, poda. Everybody gets their chance. And it would be nice if everybody had their chance in the committee as well. Some people sit back and they say, oh, look, what's the committee done now? You know, it's your opportunity to be part of that committee. Please put your hand up. Yes, sir.
Rob, there's some nomination forms on the paper. If you're passing around, maybe Colin, if you can pass them around and hand them to me in the meeting. I want to see people nominated for the positions.
Okay, just while Phil is talking there, we've got some bits and pieces, tuning gangs left over from a batch that we had from the deceased estate. If anyone wants any of that equipment, just a donation to the club, give Jeff a couple of gold coins or whatever, you're free to take whatever's out the front there. No worries. As part of the general meeting, you may notice that we're going to hold the general meeting on Sunday, March the 5th. This is the first time we've held it in the afternoon. What has the committee done now? How come we're holding it in the afternoon? We always hold it at night time. Well, as I said before, we're trying to please as many people as possible, but it's a little bit difficult. You can't please everybody. But as you know, we have the nighttime meetings and we have the coffee club meetings. There's people that attend the daytime coffee club meetings because they can't drive at night to come to the nighttime meeting. Those people would like a say in who runs the club as well. So they'd like to come to the general meeting. So this time, the committee decided, okay, we'll give it a try. We'll hold the meeting during the daytime and see what happens. Okay, that was the theory behind it. So that'll be on the 5th of March. Bring your partners, whatever, it's daytime. We're in a museum. The museum is open, so they're free to wander around and have a look. It's quite interesting in there. Membership fees will be due after the general meeting. The club membership fees have been on $35 for quite a long time. Discussions at the beginning of the year, because we've got added expenses moving into the museum, etc., we have to pay a little bit more here and there. We were talking about putting the membership fees up. This is the committee, you know, put membership fees up to $50. But we decided, because the club has done so well with memberships, with Bunnings drives, the increase in the money we get for sausages now on the Bunnings drive has really boosted our coffers a lot. So we've decided to lower it to $45. So that will become due after the general meeting. So membership fees this year will be $45. Members will, if they're paid up now, they will be financial to take part in the voting and so forth. Jeff, yes?
Yeah, usually it's the AGM. After the AGM, it's when they call you. Yeah, that's all I've been in the deal.
Okay, good. So covered that. Okay, so the front bit tonight was only ever going to be short. We've got a guest speaker here tonight, Trent from the Sunshine Coast. He's graciously offered to come up here to give us a talk on contesting. Trent is very experienced in the field. He covers a lot of contests. He does contest managing for the WIA on certain contests as well. So he's not just a fly-by-night. He's done it many, many times, and you'll often hear him on the radio. He's got contest call signs, etc., etc. I'll let him explain a little bit more what he does. So a big welcome to Trent, and it's all yours.
Can you hear me from here, guys? Yeah. Because I'm not jumping up and there with my wrecked knees. Hang on the stairs.
You can pick up that mic, Trent, if you want to.
Oh, I should be right.
Didn't have to bend down.
Yeah. Righto. This presentation, I've done it in South Australia, I've done it in Western Australia, and I've done it in Bayside now. So can we just flick to the next one? Basically, what we're going to do is run through what a modern contest station is. It's the SA2R, which is single operator 2 radios, where you're running more than one radio. How we go through appraisal of a contest station, which is also an amateur radio station, any sort of HF, how to work out whether it's a good setup. Run through multi-operator. So if you guys are going to do any HF work, what you really need to do to get your, whether it's the RD or the what's the other one, the John Moyle, just how to set your station up so it doesn't interfere with itself. Types of antennas to use, different software, and then a run through and some N1MM, which is, it's probably the most common of the newer types of software that's out. Basically, why we use it a lot, you can do SSB, RIDI, and CW with the one software package, so it's pretty smart. Feel free to give these out to anyone that wants them, guys. Have we got audio from that computer around the speakers or not?
No, not here.
Okay. I'll work that out in a minute. Okay, what we won't be doing, I'm not going to worry about VHF, UHF, distance-based scoring or anything, microwave activities. I'm basically a HF contester, although I did get on the VHF, UHF at the weekend. I won't go through what drugs you use to stay awake. You can find your own. I asked a Yank about it because he used to operate 48 hours non-stop in contests. And I said, what do you use to stay awake for 48 hours? And one guy came back and he said, oh, I don't drink coffee. So I just take one no-dose and that keeps me awake for the 48 hours. I asked another guy who was a pharmacist. He gave me about 48 different drugs on one list. And he said, we use these. This will get most of us through for the 48 hours without falling asleep. So, and the other thing we're not going to worry about is things you can research easy. I mean, you can most of these days you can look it up on the net. Mr. Maestro. Right, Google's your friend. We all know that one. I mean, we can be an expert on medicine, but we can be an expert on radio if you type it in quick enough. I don't know, has anyone seen any of this AI stuff that they're talking about at the moment with the chatbots, just how advanced it is? Yeah. You've got to try it. It's just unbelievable. You can ask it a question, it will just give you an answer. It's like very well researched.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, there's a chat GPT that they've been promoting in the media and talking about how amazing it is, and a lot of apparently university students are using it to do their assignments. But anyway, they're just giving it the right questions and it's merely giving the answers. So it's pretty amazing what's out there. Right, basics. What we're going to go through is antennas, coax, radio power, paper and pen. That's all you need to do a contest. I mean, too many guys get too worried about how complicated it can be. But if the reality is, if you've got a pad, you can just jot all the numbers down. If you want to enter the contest properly, you can feed that into software, which is the easiest way to go. So that's the basic needs that you've got. Next one. Ideal in any contest is we all have a dream, but you really want more than one antenna. Like what the biggest trap that guys get caught on is where, oh, my trap vertical works fine. Well, it works fine until it's up against some opposition. Then all of a sudden you find out how good it is. Basically, we look at trying to get top end radios with what we're doing. Like I'm one of the operators of VK4KW or VJ4K, and we've got a pretty top end station there. We've pretty well got every record from Australia in every contest that we've entered, but it's a particularly good setup. It's in a really good location, long horizons, low horizons, so it's got good below 5 degree angles for propagation. We run PC logging. We don't use the internet at 4KW. It's just the way we are. We don't have a comfortable shack there. It's not air conditioned. We learn whether it's too hot or whether we're going to operate a contest or not. And one of the ones that you really need is you need to be able to stay in a chair if you're going to do it yourself, or you need to be able to get somebody else in there. But we'll go into that a bit later because there's some really interesting stuff that they're doing overseas at the moment. Cue next one. But basically, one of the things that we've... Do you want me to use it?
Just making sure that like audio.
Oh, well, I can use it if you want. I'm quiet.
You're right.
One of the things that guys get caught on is just where their signals are. And basically, 1,000 watts, if we're starting at 10 dB, it's a 20 dB stronger signal. And one of our problems that we've got from amateur radio, HF worldwide, and even getting into 6 meters now, is we're getting so much interference on the bands. And if you haven't got that extra bit of power, you're just not going to get in front of anyone. You just can't get into the States. You can't get into Europe because their band noise is just so bad. So yes, on 10 watts you can do it, but it's the third Sunday after Jesus got pulled down off the cross that it works. And it doesn't work any other time. And it's okay to say it'll do it. Yes, it does, but not all the time. And that's where I'm saying that you ideally need 399.9 watts just to get it to the right level. That's right, huh?
Correct.
So if we're going to do this, how does a 10 watt station compete? The only way you're going to compete with a 10 watt, and this is someone who's a foundation, you've really got to pick the times you're going to do it. You've really got to pick the times your antennas are optimized. And that's the hard part of it. When's my antenna better than anyone else's? Like, we have a path from Australia at about 2 in the morning that's a long path USA path on 15 meters. So have anyone used that path at all? No. Yeah. It's a really, not many people know about it. It's well and truly there. There's a path to D4C via Alaska at 2 in the morning, and you aim straight at Alaska and you'll work D4C because they're an Antipodean contact, and that's just, it doesn't matter what way you've been, but Alaska seems to be the best way to do it.
You used the big word there. What was it? Antipode or something like that?
Antipode, the opposite side of the Earth, there's a propagation anomaly where the opposite side of where you are will get highlighted during the day. So you'll actually be able to work like a lot of you would, if you're doing a bit of HF, you'd say work EA8, D4C, CN2 like Morocco, Canary Islands, basically the middle of the Atlantic is the opposite side of the world to us. And when it peaks, you can basically aim anywhere you want and you'll work them. That's really weird, but it's called Antipodean propagation. So next one, please. So one of the problems that we see it all the time here, the guys whinging on 80 meters about this. Look, there is foundations running linears. There's full course running big linears. There's people that can't help themselves. They get a Ferrari, they'll drive it fast. But the reality is there's a lot of people who can be running 10 watts and doing the right thing as a foundation, or running 400 watts as a full call and sound massively loud. And you've really got to have a look at what they're doing. So this next slide, this is a pretty good 40 meter antenna and how it propagates. So if we look, this is a slow angle and it's got a good high angle load, but nothing going straight up. So it's not going to have any propagation, or not good propagation as far as into VK2. It'll go pretty well, but not massively strong. This is something up a wavelength in the air or higher. It's obviously got the side nulls. This is your typical cloverleaf style pattern, but it's basically, we know there's the side nulls because of the effect of the balun on it. If you actually can get rid of this null by not running a balun on them, but then you got a problem with a bit of RF getting back. So that's a normal. Yep.
statement and then come back to me.
What's that?
Finish what you're saying.
Yeah, next one. So if we look, where's the next?
You go finish?
No, I want the next one.
Oh, okay. That's obviously out of Marigal, and I've played with it.
Yep.
What I don't understand in the program that you have mentioned here, if I'm using end fed on an angle, say, 35 degrees, is it horizontal to the ground clock, or is it actually sitting on the 35 degrees? Do you understand my question?
It's what the X, Y, Z axis tell you they are. It's got the axis on it.
Okay. I realise that. I'm just looking at.
It's what you've drawn on it. But this is this is reference to the ground, and whatever it produces is reference to the ground. Yeah. Not out at a 35 degree angle or anything. Yeah. So this is poor old Freddie's just done his foundation, and someone's told him a G5RV will work fine because I've been using one for years, and all you got to do is run it along your fence. If you run a 40 metre G5RV along the fence, it does this. It actually radiates straight up, as we all know. So what happens is, if we go back to that other one, Buggerlug's here with 10 watts. This is a 10 dB mark here. There's 0. He's got no signal up here because he's got a nice, properly installed thing. He's trying to work the X. If we go back to the other one, this is the antenna on the side fence where it's got really strong NBIS signals. He's got a 10 dB increase. So he's running 10 watts, sounding like 100 to people down south. And the other bloke, they're exactly the same. Now, he's got the shirts because he's running 100 watts. He knows the other guy should only be running 10, but the other guy's getting as strong a signal report as him. It's purely on the antennas, whatever you put up. And that's why I say the more you can put up, the better. Next one. Now, if we put the two together, and this is your secret for the John Moyle, basically those two antennas are always going to have a gap in them. You'll never get your dipole up high, you get your dipole low, you're still going to miss out. This is from W9XT. He's done a lot of work does a lot of different antenna, different modification stuff for radios. If you go onto his website, you'll see it's just reams of it. But this is basically a really simple power splitter where he's used a 3-way switch. It's pretty smart. So it's nothing but a 3-way switch, a couple of 50 ohm, a couple of quarter waves in 70 ohm, and then all he's done is when it's in that position, it switched this one out. When it's there, they're both in, and when it's there, it switched that one out. It's a really simple system. So it's a sort of thing that you can look at, so you can say, right, we want to have a good strong signal on 80 metres in the RD or the John Moyle. You can have the high, if you can get a high one, or a vertical. So a vertical is going to have a low angle, and then you have a low horizontal, so you're really bashing a signal into Sydney, and you're going to win on both sides because you actually combine the two together and switch them in and out, change them around. That's not expensive. I mean, just most people should have a 3-way switch in their shack. I mean, and the missus won't miss the 75 ohm coax when you pinch it, so it should be right. Next one. So basically, when you've got a 10 watt or this is any watt station, if you're going to run SSB, if you don't use your processor, you're kidding yourself. Most decent processors these days have got 15 to 20 dB extra boost in them. It's pretty easy to get 10 dB gain out of a processor, like as long as it's set up properly. The other thing you can do with it, this is just a foundation, make sure you get some gain antennas. And gain antennas, I've been doing articles for AR for years, and I keep getting guys in WA whinging and bitching about they can't get over to the East Coast, and it's all the East Coast fault. And the dipsticks run around with mobile antennas and wonder why they can't get to the East Coast on 40 metres with a 706. So anyway, any of them that ever bother to put up a Yagi over there crash into the East Coast. There's world records set out of VK6, but the whingers want to have a whinge. So gain antennas, and look, seriously, on 40 metres, 80 metres, anything that's got two elements on it is going to work. So if it's two dipoles, if it's two verticals, whatever, phase together, they will work, outperform anything you'll see here on the bands. One thing here is learn CW. If you haven't tried it already, it's worth learning. It does get through when other signals don't. you know, like other than FTA. Right? Use the right antenna for the right job, and you can never have enough antennas. I've only said that 3 times already, but that's the reality of it. Yeah, good. No, you could need more. Guys, this is I came across this. It was G3 SEK, and he's now GM3 SEK. I don't think he's died yet. He's an English tech writer. Does a lot of work on. Used to do a lot of valve work and used to do a lot of control gear for valves. But he's basically got a really good rundown on just getting rid of splatter on your SSB signals. And if you listen to every other state other than Queensland, they're really bad. But basically, we've got to remember where everything sits in the order. Like a basic SSB transmitter, they're all straightforward. They're gonna have a clipper. They're gonna have an exciter. It's going to work. They all work the same. But if we go to the next rundown, next slide, basically this, and I've left this one with you, is basically work through all your steps on your radio, and realistically, these steps are basically put it into a dummy load, make sure you're not transmitting all over the countryside, get your mic control right, get your power control right. Short form of this, don't run your rig at any more than 80%. Because these rigs that we're all using at the moment, they're 100 watt or they're 200 watt. If you're running them at 100 watts, that PA is at its peak. It's designed to run 100 watts. They're made by Japanese and Chinese manufacturers. Like, you look at the transistors in them, look at their specs, and they're flat out at 100 watts. So if you're running them at 100 watts, expect distortion. You know, that's the reality. Wind them back to 80, and you just won't get it. And that's why so many guys that are running contest stations run linear amplifiers, but they're running their rigs at 30 to 40 watts. So the rigs just don't distort. Whereas we've got this situation where we've got guys that are running 100 watt rigs that come off CB, which 90% of us have, but on CB, everything was all controls to the right. And if you do it with handbrake gear, you run into strife because it's 100 watts and there's no headroom on it whatsoever, except the Yaesu FTDX 5000, which has got headroom. Next one, please. These guys, you're going to have a copy of this, aren't you? Yeah, so you can read through it, but it's GM3 SEK. It's a really good read. It's the same guy that did, he also did a really good article on getting rid of noise in your shack. So it was basically using ferrite 31s to get rid of a lot of bad noise in the shack and how to go about it. But that one, we can go on to the next one. Preconceptions. This is running a contest now, guys. You don't have to announce your call sign when running a frequency. So if you're going CQ, you don't have to put out a call. If you've got a pile-up going. The worst thing you can do is not announce your call sign every time. At 4KW, that's what we do. We always make sure every single QSO we announce our call sign. Because you get guys tuning up the band, they find you. Oh, no, I've already worked him. Or what's your call? So you get them cranky and everyone else cranky. It's not a level playing field with contests. Some stations are set up really well. The reality is that Southeast Queensland's probably the best place in Australia to contest from. Right? I've done heaps and heaps of propagation comparisons, and it'll stun you. Like it's basically from Harvey Bay to Tweed and out to Toowoomba. You can do the same comparison with anywhere else in the country, and nowhere will come near it. We just get this really good opening to the States. We get really good opening to Europe. We get, if you're in the right spots, you'll get really good South America, and the rest of the country just don't get it. And if you talk to any of the VK3s, they absolutely get frustrated with us because we're just...
That doesn't apply to 6 metres, though.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't.
They didn't call it, what was it, the QG62 gang. Next one, please. And this is what I wanted the audio for. We're not going to hear this, are we?
It's supposed to be on there.
Okay, I'll do that.
No, go back to it.
That's supposed to be on there.
Yeah. This guy's K9 Papa Germany. He was operating a ZF2MM. That was his QSL card, and QRZ actually didn't allow that as his QRZ photo. They actually have contesters get together at Dayton at a Hooters restaurant over there.
So these were his log keepers, were they, Frank?
Yeah, log keepers. It's a shame we can't hear this audio because it's pretty amazing. This guy was, these contacts that I've got recorded there at 430 an hour, so working into the States. Dave, can you just grab my laptop? I'll play it off the laptop. Please. Will that mic reach all the way down? That's only that's only for the recording. Oh.
You want the other one, I can go out and turn it on.
What's that?
PA system.
So how do we get into the PA system?
Stuck out the back.
Oh, okay.
I can bring a mic for you anyway.
Oh, that'll do. Next one. You can. That guy's a phenomenal operator. I reckon there's about 10 guys in the world that can run at that rate at over 400 an hour. It's
So how does he log?
PC. Politically correct. No, straight onto a computer. Straight to him, straight in.
Oh, so he's keen that it is. Wow.
Yeah, it's the best we've done down here in Australia. We get close to 400, but not over. Yeah.
Is he running up with a headset and all that?
Headset and usually foot switch. Yeah, the foot switch makes it really defined because there's no odd noise getting into it or anything. So the foots, and like you can go and get a J-car foot switch for $19, so and they work fine. But if you're looking at what the guys are doing now, we've got guys now that are doing, which I'll talk about a bit later, but they're doing CW at that rate. So they're doing 400 an hour on 2 radios at once on CW. Like, they're mutants, but they can do it. And they're practicing using Morse runner and things like that. So they'll have 2 laptops. No, they're using like 10 and 15 meters at once. And so they've got 2 pile-ups going, and they're working the 2 pile-ups on CW. And the practice that they use 2 laptops with 2 versions of the contest software, just merrily calling. If anyone hasn't tried Morse Runner, you've got to try it because it's unbelievable. You'd swear you're operating a CW contest. It's that good. Like it's, you can tell it you want band noise, you want lids, you want QRN, whatever you want, it'll do it. Or you can say I don't want any of that. So you can do that as well. This is there's a website that Tom NS6T's put together where you can get a great circle map of your own location. So when we look at things like where we saw that that radiation pattern on that antenna earlier, where it said it did that sort of thing, came back in and back out around. When you overlay it on a map like that, you can start to see just where you're actually going. If you put a dipole up and it's angled this way, or you've got a Yagi up, you know, if you're looking at a say a 30-degree 3 dB plot, you might be going to 80 back to 50 where you got 3 dB. So you're basically covering North America. But you go outside it, you're putting no signal into Japan, and this is what a lot of guys are finding, that at the moment they're running. Like whether it's DXing or whatever, they can't work into Japan, but all they're going to do is swing the antenna around. They can, and some of those side nulls on a properly mounted dipole is pretty bad. Like you can have a 40 or 50 dB side null on one. So this is worthwhile as far as when you're doing the station design. Like if you come back to that 3 dB from here, you've picked up Japan, but you've also picked up England. You've picked up pretty well all of Europe, just on that same 3 dB run. Now 3 dB at the other side of the world, if you're S9, 3 dB is not really that much difference either way. And you're putting a signal over, you know, the majority of the emitters in the world in one hit. So next one, this is just a bit about station design. So has anyone seen them? Oh, you've used MMANA. So anyone else tried it? Had a play with it? No? Yes? No? It's a Japanese guy. These are free. It's a fair bit easier to use than NEC 4. But there's a heap of standard antennas in it. You can basically say, well, what happens if I put up a 4-element Yagi 20 feet in the air? And it'll tell you what's wrong with it, what's right with it. It'll go through, it'll model the whole lot. I've found it over the years. I've been using it for over 10 years, and I've just found it just pretty spot on. It's pretty, you tell it you want this. Like I put together a magnificent vertical on 160 metres, which was a 40-foot Hills telomast. We put a bit of 20-foot of scaffolding tube at the top of that. Then we stuck a station master on top of that, so it was 80 foot long. And then we wanted to load it up on 160 metres. We had 80 radios in the ground, and we ended up just putting 2 capacity wires off the bottom of the station master, and the thing runs. It's spot on. But it was exactly what MMA and A said. That was the model. That's exactly what you need to do. We copied it to everything it told us is spot on. So if you haven't used it, download freebie. Absolutely worth it. Next one. And it gives you these sort of plots. So it gives you an idea of, right, that's a 20-metre antenna. What are we going to do? Where's it going to work? And again, if we say, right, 3 dB down, 3 dB down, we've got a pretty broad spread off a standard Yagi. You know, that was a 3-element. One of the things that a lot of guys get caught on is they want to use things like tuners on HF Yagis. Now, the problem with using a tuner on a HF Yagi, on the next slide, is it doesn't know where it is. So because you've tuned you're way off tune, and then you've tuned the driven element, you haven't done anything with the reflector or the director, and this is actually radiating out the back of it. So it's running a 20-metre Yagi, and just running it off frequency. So I've moved it to 14.95 as the frequency. But you'll have an SWR on that and think, oh, well, I can use my tuner on. I'll bring it back down. My SWR is okay, but it's not radiating where you hope it is. It's radiating totally the opposite direction. So it's all right in the vertical because they radiate equally poorly in all directions, so it doesn't really matter. But with Yagis, it's really critical because you'll find that this is where a lot of guys get caught with mucking around with the tuning. If it's out, it really comes down to what your resonance is with your Yagis as to whether it's actually radiating in the direction you hope. So next one.
So would you be better off not putting the tuner in and just using it as a higher SWR?
Oh, you'd be better off to fix it.
The trouble is you can't operate both ends of the band.
Yes, you can. get a bigger linear. You'll be right.
That's not quite honest.
That's not the problem.
No. And that's the trap. If you've got any of the non-trapped linear, non-trapped antennas,
No, come on.
that most of them will be broad enough.
Yeah, but I mean, most of it's got trapped elements.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a real fan of the HB35C. It's full size, 20 metres, and it's full size on all 10 and 15. I've actually modelled it on MMA and I've been trying to get a second one, which I did over the weekend. I'm doing a series of designs for them, which I've done on MMA and A to actually make them resonant from 40 all the way through to 6 metres, with no switching. It's just one feed line. But ask me about that later. But yeah, it's an old design that the guy that originally designed the HB35. There was two designers. One guy was from Sydney, and there was a German guy. They're both Germans. One German lived in Sydney. The other guy lived in Germany. Went to America. Summer, DJ1UT, and he actually produced them commercially. He died about 20 years ago, but his designs are still on the web, and they're just a modification of the HB35 that he's done. And they'll run right across the band. They'll run all of 20 metres. They'll run all of 10, all of 15. Quite amazing antennas. But one of his designs was how to make them work on 30 metres, 40 metres, 6 metres, and it's not that hard. It's actually quite surprising. This is one of the things that we come through is, and we see this a lot out of the States, where they talk about using stacks, and you'll see it. You'll have a look at a US contest station, and they'll have 200-foot towers and antennas all the way up them. Our reality in Australia is all our DX comes in there. If you think you need a stack, rethink it, because you don't. We just don't get high angle long distance DX. It just doesn't happen. It's like 1%. It's very minor. So
Is that applicable to all the HF bands?
Yep. Our biggest trap in Australia is it's basically ignore 80 because that's just got to come in low or wherever it comes in. But everything above that, it's below 10 degrees. So if your antennas, like those ones we showed earlier, where they're absolutely bashing up there somewhere, it might be all right if you're in the middle of Europe, but in the middle of Australia, it don't work. And how we get away with it is you've either got to be on a big hill or a reasonable hill. If you're over the coastal plain anywhere, you'll probably fix it. So where I'm saying that is like around here when you're on one of the blocks that are up a bit, and you can see through to the sea, or you got a reasonable long distance. A 40-foot nally is probably all you need, and you'll put a good signal out. But you get further inland, you've got a fair bit of work. You've got to be up high. You've got to have your antennas up 20, 30 metres plus. Probably the biggest signals I ever heard in Australia was I was down at Peter Ferrari's, I'm trying to think what his call sign was, VK2 BXQ, and he had a 4-element quad at 120 feet on 20 metres at Tullamore in New South Wales. And we used a FT101E and a CB as Henry Consult 2KD5, and it put out 399 watts on 20 metres. Yeah, we got 50/9 into the east coast of the US long path. It's pretty handy. Well, I didn't know. You just wound the processor up. I'll claim that I was a kid then. Next one. Right. Just going to do a run through on HFTA. Has anyone tried that, used it at all? No? Yes? No? Righto. This comes free with the ARRL handbook, or the antenna book. It was written by Dean Stroud. He did the original terrain analysis program. Dean also does some propagation stuff that you can, really interesting, some of the stuff that he's done. He's got a propagation modelling tool. So if you're going to go to, it's been outdated now, but I went to Vanuatu years ago, and Dean actually gave me a propagation forecast specifically for Port Vila. So it was amazing just how accurate it was. Basically, what HFTA does is that you feed in the information, and it'll actually plot where your signals arrive on those on your antennas. So it'll plot your antenna against the arrival of signals. So if we can go to the next one, right? So basically, how we used to do it, and this is how we originally did VK4KW. You had to plot all the terrain, and you fed that into a I was going to say spreadsheet, but it was actually a notepad type text file. You took it out to 20,000 feet, and then you fed it into the program. It actually give you the propagation of how that antenna was going to perform, and whether you wanted to move it back, move it forward. So you could actually optimize where you want it with one click. You could say move it 100 feet there, that way, and it show you the difference with each site. Next one. So instead of doing those plots, K62U, I was discussing some propagation stuff with him and had a whinge about it, and within a week he put it up on his website. So basically, what you do is you go to K62U propagation website and you put in an analysis for HFTA. You give it the longitude and latitude of your station, and it plots out to 5 kilometres, 10 kilometres, whatever you set it to, every degree of 360 degrees around your station site. So it's got a full, what your terrain's like. There's a hill 20 mile away that you hadn't thought of. This was Martin, VK5GN, it's now VK7GN set up over in, so this is all it basically plots it out like. This is in the notepad format. So next one. Now this one, this was the question somebody had about the propagation. This is part of HFTA is the long-term propagation statistics. So there's the elevation angles. So 1 degree, 2 degrees. So we're looking at that propagation, the profile of that antenna where HFTA does is it actually says US from VK2. But if you look here, when 41%, 43%, and in that band there, pretty much all of it, all below 10%, you've got over 90% of your propagation is all really low. So if you're doing any antenna design, or you're putting up something, you've really got to work out how in the world, if I want to work the States consistently, I'm not talking about I worked the States one day last year, consistently into the States, they're the things you've got to optimise. So is everyone comfortable on what I've said there with how that works? So if we go to the next one, you can actually, you can get fancy, but don't worry about it, guys. This guy actually has got, you can actually get it real time if you want, but that takes a bit of mucking around to set it up. You can actually get the real time propagation this week, so then you can put into HFTA. The other one's a long-term one. This is instant. Different antennas. So we've got 160 feet up, and this is between two different stations. So this is the terrain profile from man in red, and this is blue. Blue's obviously got a reasonably big drop off straight away. Buggerlugs here is looking straight into hills. So this is a comparison. I did this for NERG last year. So it's VK3 versus VK3HF versus VK3MH. So 3HF's up in central Victoria, 1,600 metres, really steady drop off. That one will be Lee Moore 3GK, and that one's 3MH. So you can see that Lee's going to have some sort of effect here. This signal here, as long as he's height, there's nothing in the road to get that low angle. So if we go to the next slide, this is what gets used in HFTA. So these are the takeoff angles in degrees, and what it shows is the percentage of time. So this is on. Fantastic! I didn't put what frequency it was. Let's assume it's 10 metres, 15 metres. But basically it's saying that at 2-degree angle, that 16% of your signals are there. So if you're not getting a signal at that one, you've missed out. Now this is where I was saying where you'll get a guy running 10 watts. He's got a good Yagi, he's got it up 2 wavelengths in the air, and he's working into the States, and you can't even hear him. You can't hear him because you're over in this zone. It's a huge difference. I mean, it's what had, you know, we've all, like I said, there's a lot of guys that have been through the CV scene, you've been through different HF areas, and you wonder why somebody can do it. If we take this guy here, that location, these are in dB, 14 to 19, so it's 5 dB stronger than anyone over that whole range there. It's quite amazing, and you can see that's how big a difference it can make. Next one, please.
Is that because his antenna's height above ground, or his elevation?
It depends on what he's got. You can play either way. You can take the actual location. Yeah. And that's what I was saying. A low hill on the coastal plain in Queensland is probably as good as you want anywhere in Australia. To give you an example, Paul VK4MA, who's up on a ridge up near Harvey Bay on a little bit of a rise, he made 5,000 contacts on 10 metres alone about 10 years ago in the CQ worldwide. He was one of the best in the world. There was multi stations that go on 48 hours and they didn't do as good as him.
So at sea level, or just a little bit higher, if you've got a good view out to the ocean.
Yeah. If you're trying to get ground gain, and if you've got a slope towards the US, and you're starting to come down the hill a little bit towards the US and Japan, that's probably the optimum location. Right. But you still want to occasionally get long path. Oh, well, have you got a week? Righto. You pick up gain depending on the slope of the ground. So, and so if you've got I haven't done one with a flat ground, the slope of the ground increases the actual gain of your antennas. So these antennas are looking at the 16 dB gain. Now that's not normal. They've picked up 5-6 dB because of ground gain, because of their locations, because they're dropping away towards the US. One of the 40-metre Yagi at VK4KW has got a slope that drops nearly 100 metres over a couple of kilometres, and its theoretical gains up around 15 dB of ground gain. So it's massive signal into Europe. It's all right into the States, but into Europe it's just unbelievable. But it's gain created by the actual slope of the ground. Does that make sense?
A bit of slippage.
Yeah, a bit of slippage. Next one. So basically, this is how you can compare locations. So what it actually does here, it puts in a figure of merit. But the only problem with that figure of merit, it's all US design, so I ignore it. We've got to work out what's the best antenna in here. And the best one's this blue one, and it's only at 45 feet. It actually outperforms a 90-foot antenna. It outperforms a stack